Welcome to the PDX podcast. We're sitting out here today with Alicia Coleman and Ruby Lexington.
Woohoo!
And it's July 4th, so Independence Day. We're in Corbett, Oregon, which is awesome. We just sat through Corbett Fun Fest, which is a awesome parade.
Sat through is the key words there.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. It's the coolest parade ever. They're just really long intermissions.
Extra intermissions this year, I feel like.
It was an excellent time, though. It was an excellent time. We got to see the horses. Bunch of free candy. Corbett Fun Fest. Check it out.
.com.
Anyway, today we're going to talk about food allergies. And I feel this is a very important topic for Portland because Portland's kind of known as a food city. And moving here from Phoenix, a lot of things in Phoenix aren't quite as progressive as they are in Portland, especially when it comes to food. So things like being gluten-free. Before I knew someone who had celiac disease, I didn't really understand what that was about. I thought it was kind of a douchey thing to do, or like it was just the trend of the month or whatever, right? And like same thing with like being vegetarian or vegan, or like it didn't really dawn on me that it could be a food allergy or something like gluten, where it's celiac disease, where you're allergic to wheat and gluten. So that's why you're gluten-free. It's not just because you're riding along the wave of trend. Same thing with being vegan. Sometimes there are food allergies that would prevent you from being vegan, like being allergic to eggs, being allergic to dairy, even being lactose intolerant. Like things like that would kind of drive you towards a vegan diet. So I feel like this is super important to talk about. And here in Portland, it's really cool because everyone is kind of on the know, and everyone is very aware of diet restrictions. And well, I shouldn't say everyone, but most people are very aware, and you're not going to find a situation where you would in Phoenix, where like Alicia and I, for instance, would go to a restaurant. We would ask what might be gluten-free, and someone would be like, well, what even is that? I don't know what that means. And I remember more times than not Alicia having to describe what being gluten-free was, or even like what gluten was, period, to the person serving her food. Which that's not how it should be. It should be treated like any other allergy, shellfish, peanuts, whatever, man. Like, it messes you up. I know in your case, like, you get headaches, things like that happen when you have gluten. We know someone else who has celiac disease who gets real muscles tense up, and like
bloated.
Yeah, they don't feel good, things like that. And I know with you, for instance, you were also having a lot of pain, body type pain, and
oh yeah.
So Ruby, before she found out that she had some food allergies, would just be in pain all the time. Like it was really debilitating. Things were really messed up for her, and she didn't know why. She went to a bunch of doctors. Finally, she had an allergy panel done, and that kind of showed her that she was actually allergic to certain foods that might be causing this pain for her. So why don't you go into that a little bit and talk about like how you found out about your allergies, why you started the vegan route, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So I think you're exactly right. It started with that because the majority of my life I was told that I had this chronic pain issue that I was just going to have to learn to deal with. And for a lot of years, they talked about it as though it was some kind of myalgia. And I think that was kind of the catchphrase of that period. The early 2000s, that was like any unexplained pain. You're a chick? Fuck it. It's some kind of myalgia. Whatever, take this fucking pill. Like, that's all it was. And I think it shifted, and MS is like the hot thing right now, and they started talking about MS, and for a while I was like, some kind of myalgia, chronic pain issue, it's bullshit, but I'm pretty tough, I'll just deal with it, because like going to doctor after doctor after doctor, like there's a certain point where you're like, fuck it, I'll just live with it. I can't fix it because it takes way too much effort. And then they started talking about MS, and I think that was really what motivated me to like, no, we're going to find a different reason for this, because actual MS, God bless those people, there's no fucking way. Like that, your entire body just shuts the fuck down, and then you die. And it's really, really a horrible, brutal disease, but your functions will stop functioning. So you can't move your legs anymore. And then, just your whole body shuts down. It's terrible. And when they started talking about that as a possible cause for the crazy things that my body was doing, for example, my back would just spasm and I'd fall over. And I'd be stuck for 45 seconds or so while my back just freaked out for that 45 seconds. There was nothing I could do about it. And the reason I'm telling you all of this, like, extreme ass shit is that I think when people think about food allergies, they think about a douchey thing. Yeah, it's a douchey thing. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, you have allergies. I'm gluten free. Yeah, whatever, dipshit. Have some fucking buns. You know, whatever. But it is and can be really, really extreme, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. Anyway, so they started talking about MS, and I was like, yeah, that's just not going to happen. I can't accept that that is what's wrong with me. It doesn't feel that extreme, for one thing. Yes, my back spasms, but, like, I can't believe that this is just going to progressively get worse. I just couldn't accept that as an answer. That was not okay for me. And so when we moved to Oregon, we all of a sudden had access to doctors that I think cared a little bit more, quite honestly, than some of the doctors I'd been to in Phoenix, because I did try for a number of years there to get more than just a myalgia diagnosis. But as anybody who has any sort of chronic issue knows, that's really hard to do. It's hard to get a diagnosis of any kind. And so when we moved to Oregon, I kind of renewed my efforts because it was this whole new set of doctors that I could go ply with all of my problems and hope for a better response. And they did. Finally, I ended up at a place that took me seriously and was like, hey, you have chronic pain. That sucks real bad. And also all these other things are happening. And you're terrified of MS. So let's actually figure out what's going on. Maybe it is MS. And if it is, that sucks. But let's rule out all these other things before we just jump to that conclusion. And I think that should be much more mainstream in our society, and it's not, and it makes me sad. But they did. They found this panel, and essentially what I'm allergic to are eggs, dairy, whey protein specifically in dairy, not lactose, which is what most people are allergic to, peanuts, and mushrooms. And you wouldn't think that that would be all that bad. You're like, oh yeah, I mean milk and cheese and yogurt, that sucks. But it is. It's a lot more than that. It's more than just eggs and, oh, I can't have cheese. They put, for example, potato chips. That should be it's potatoes, right? It's potatoes and salt and maybe some other seasonings if it's like barbecue or some shit.
Right.
No, it's not. It's not. They put wheat in it for some reason. They put milk in it. If you look at the back of a potato chip bag, almost all of them have whey specifically in them.
Well, that's a big thing for you, especially like the ingredients on food boxes. It's hard to find something that, either doesn't have eggs or doesn't have whey or doesn't have some sort of dairy in it, or it's just kind of tough for you to actually find foods that you can eat. So that kind of drove you towards a vegan type diet, not necessarily vegetarian or where you're avoiding meat, because that's one of the few things you actually can have, correct? Right. So I know that's been a big struggle for you, and being in a group of friends that hangs out, we have Ruby, where she can't actually have a great number of things just based on the ingredients. But we also have someone else who can't have wheat particularly, or actually gluten. It's that same kind of thing. Like, you don't really realize what all gluten is in or where it's present until you start looking at the back of boxes and you start looking at the ingredients of things. Wheat, just like the potato chips that we were talking about earlier, wheat is also present in like Pringles, which, for instance, I didn't know yesterday.
I missed the fuck out of some Pringles. I literally was just saying this yesterday in the grocery line, how much I miss Pringles, because why the fuck would you put, and it's wheat starch, right? And so, no, but that probably has the wheat protein in it still that I can't have, that has the gluten in it, that is the actual protein that would fuck you up. And why would you put this in something that doesn't really require it? It's in so many foods across the board.
It's supposed to be a potato chip, and it's not. Yeah,
there's no need for it.
You would think it would just be like a fried potato, some oil, and some salt, for instance. But it's not. There's so many other things, preservatives, which, make it possible for us to be able to go to the grocery store and actually have food on the shelf. Like, I get it, but at the same time, you don't really realize it until you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Until you have to start reading labels constantly.
Well, no, I think that's part of the problem.
Understand exactly what's in your food, really.
That's it. It's not reading labels, and I hate to say it, but I feel like that's a catchphrase that we need to get rid of, because everybody says read the labels, and people read the labels, and we finally gotten to the point where we're like, oh, maybe I should realize that a serving size of ice cream isn't half the fucking container, or
right.
It is. Don't get me wrong, it totally is half the container, but it's not, right? And I think when we say read the labels,
cup.
right? Yeah. when we think of read the labels, I think a lot of times we think of that. We think of, okay, what's a serving size? How much sugar does it have? How much salt does it have? Does it have a lot of preservatives in it? But you don't realize until there's a food allergy how much cross-fucking contamination is in everything. Like, if you have a food allergy, you have to read the label of shit that you wouldn't have to. Okay, barbecue sauce. What is barbecue sauce essentially made of? Barbecue sauce is essentially some sort of tomato, some sort of vinegar, some sort of spice enhancement, right? Some sort of sweetener.
A few different types of seasonings.
Right, yeah. It's basically barbecue sauce. There should be no fucking weed in there. But do you have to read barbecue sauce labels when you go to the store? Every damn time.
And teriyaki. Let me tell you about teriyaki sauce. And just all the
Why teriyaki sauce?
Things.
There's nothing in teriyaki sauce.
And it's because sometimes soy sauce will have wheat in it because why not? I guess.
Why not?
I'm often pondering this, like this.
But
why
soy
not
sauce
question
is made from
that
soybeans,
manufacturers must be coming, like just standing around or in their board meetings, just what kind of ingredients can we use for this? And even if they're cutting down costs for themselves, like, are you cutting it with this and that? Because I'm always thinking of like why you would put that shit in there. And
why the fuck would you do that?
Something like that, but. Even in that sense, I can't imagine why those ingredients are mixing shit in all the different compounds that go into this one thing. You could just make it so simple and so base and even have your preservatives and live in this world that we live in where we have to have things on the shelves and all the time in all the grocery stores. And
ready.
We got to ship it across the world and all these things. We could really do that without having 15 to 20 ingredients on every single thing.
Yeah, we could.
A cracker, a chip, a sauce.
So there's the talk that we're having right now, which is about what actually is in the food, right? And you know, the preservatives, for instance, like this is why we have to be able to preserve it. There's so many people in the world, blah, blah, blah. Like we have to be able to preserve our food. But one of those things that I never noticed, and this is definitely something that I was ignorant to before knowing people that had food allergies and lucky enough to actually learn about these types of things in my life, is also cross-contamination. Things where, like, for Ruby over here, where you're allergic to peanuts, I can't even count how many times I've seen something where it's like, this was produced in a factory that also has peanuts, or a factory, when you go, Alicia, when you go to a restaurant in a place that fries wheat in the same deep fryer as something that's gluten-free technically isn't gluten-free because there's a cross-contamination, and that's something that I never knew about before either, that it's not necessarily what's in the food, but also things that your food is touched, or like...
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The allergy being so
sharing
sensitive.
Sharing a knife, sharing a pizza
Well, and that's
cutter.
the thing. Okay, so, and this is, I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because that's another thing I think that's a really, really common misconception when you say food allergy, and this is... We, as the people, need to stand up to our doctors and say, fuck you, you work for me, Mr. Doctor. And I'm really kind of passionate about this. I'm not saying, you should go in and swear at your doctor. But
you might have to sometimes,
I am saying you need to stand up to him. We need to change this perception of when you say food allergy, a lot of people think of exactly what you just said, a peanut allergy, right? Or shellfish allergy, where if you touch this substance, it's an anaphylactic response.
Something like that, yeah.
Your actual body freaks the out, and if you don't have something to suppress that reaction, you're probably going to die. And when we talk about our food allergies, at least my food allergies, even my allergy to peanuts, it's not an anaphylactic reaction.
Yeah.
And I think as a result of that, a lot of times doctors blow it off and they won't allow you to call it a food allergy. They want you to call it a food sensitivity or a food intolerance. All right, fine.
Or they won't really follow up on it.
Or they won't follow up on it, because in the medical world, when you say food allergy, there's only one acceptable definition of that, and that is the anaphylactic response. But I think that if you're at the point where your doctors are telling you that you might have MS, perhaps that might be a serious enough allergic reaction that we could call it an allergy.
I would hope so.
And I think that's a really important thing too. I think it's important for people to realize that it's not just a douchey thing. In your case as well, it's kind of a hybrid of the two, right? I know we didn't really go into your story at all, but I think a lot of people have really, really big misconceptions about what celiac even is, because especially when you say gluten-free, I think there's for a lot of people, an automatic eye roll that takes place.
It totally happens all the time. And I even still now that I'm in Portland, I kind of feel like, oh no, I have to tell people I'm gluten-free, or I have to ask for that gluten-free menu, or say, you know, and I'm tiptoeing around it, even though it's so abundant here and it's kind of catering to someone of my needs. But just 3 years ago, I had no idea what it was. I did think it was that fad diet of the month, and everybody was, oh, I'm gluten-free because I need to be, and oh, I just don't eat this because la-di-da, and because I don't want to, and I'm choosing this. And well, no, by accident, through a blood test, I find out that I actually have celiac disease, which affects it's a sensitivity to protein. Gluten is an actual protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. And it's an autoimmune disorder that causes your stomach your immune system to attack your stomach. If it goes untreated, or, you just fuck up your diet and you say whatever, eventually, which would take a while, years and years, I'm guessing, will eventually erode. You have these little tiny bumps and waves in your stomach lining and intestine that protect it, and these little tiny feelers, I forget what they're called, whatever, excuse me, but you have those and it protects it, and eventually that will get eroded away, and then eventually it will just form a hole in your stomach, and then there's stomach cancer, and then you die. That you literally can't live like that.
So this is a serious thing. This isn't a choice.
You have to take seriously. When I first found out, my doctor told me, you have to go on a diet, you have to follow this, and you have to follow up on it. Every few years, get checked out. We're going to look at you, make sure that there's no damage. If there is, really make sure you're following your diet. It's so important. And so sometimes I probably don't eat right, or I go to places where I think, ooh, there might be some cross-contamination here, and there probably is. And
that's the thing with celiac, right? Because with celiac, it's not like, so my allergies, for example, if I'm at the store or at the restaurant and they accidentally put cheese on my refried beans, I can just scrape the cheese off and be totally fine. Totally fine. But you can't, right? If they bring your plate out and they put bread on your sandwich
already, right? If they've touched it already on there, then it's just fucked already. One little tiny crumb, and right. And this is from just the research that I've done and what my doctors have told me. Slicing something, or making a peanut butter and jelly for your kiddo, and then you're smeared it over the bread, and then you go, oh hey, I'm gonna make myself one too. Now, nope, you just
because
already
was the same knife.
Messed it up.
Damn.
Just because of that tiny little amount. And what sucks too is the symptom thing you were talking about. People's symptoms are so different.
Yeah.
You could be bloated, have diarrhea, be nauseous, be vomiting. I get migraines. My body just gets inflamed as hell and just fights me and screams at me, and sometimes I can't do anything about it. They've given me narcotics before. I've gone to the hospital and gotten morphine before because I'm in so much pain. I used to take ibuprofen daily because I was getting migraines every
that's really
single
good for your stomach,
day.
right? Yeah.
And liver.
And it was something where they were telling me, like, look, you need to stop doing that. Like, oh my God, this is so bad for you. Well,
but when you're dying every day,
constant pain. Yeah. And then I finally found out about it, and now I'm able to say, okay, hey, I can just eat right.
But you then don't have that pain, right? Now that you know, if you eat properly, you actually don't live with that level of pain anymore, right?
And when you're the
then
same
when
way,
I know, or when I mess up, then it's when oh my God, shit, no, what happened? And then I'm out for a couple of days because it's so bad. And that's why you have to take it so seriously.
So you've definitely felt better since you found out you had celiac disease, and you've cut out the gluten from your diet, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. It's made a huge difference.
You've also felt the same since you've cut out the foods from your diet as well that you're allergic to. Is that right?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, at the point at which I think I found out, I had started gaining weight because one of mine was bloated. I would get so bloated I couldn't even take my rings on and off.
Yeah.
I had to buy clothes that were literally 2 sizes bigger, and I think a lot of that was because it was just a constant influx of all of the things. You know, I'd wake up and have an egg white scramble. Oh, eggs, oops. And then I'd have a whey protein shake for a snack, you know. And then I'd have hard-boiled eggs on my salad for lunch, and I'm trying to lose weight, and I just kept getting bloated and more bloated and bigger and bigger. And yeah, now that I don't eat those things, I feel awesome. I feel tiny. I feel fast. I feel strong. I don't feel in pain anymore. I had a chronic pain issue my entire life. I remember being a kid and watching all the other kids play and being bummed out because my head hurt so bad that, like, I really wanted to go play, but this couch was just calling me. And I don't have that anymore. I live like a normal fucking person for the first time in my life just because of my diet. And that's what I think is so important, why it's so important to talk about this shit, because I don't think people fully realize. They do think it's a douchey thing, and I don't think that... How many of you listening to this feel like shit a lot of the time?
How tired are you? How many times do you feel so exhausted and you're like, what in the fuck? I slept good.
Yeah, what in the actual
water
fuck?
all day. I think I, like... And I've exercised, like, all these things, and then you still just feel like shit, and you have no clue why. And then all of a sudden, exactly, yeah, you finally figure it out, and then you get to cut those things out and take control of that again and say, oh, wow, I feel amazing all of a sudden. I feel normal.
Well, here's something that I noticed, and this kind of goes along, and this is just kind of my own personal theory, but unfortunately, I think with stuff like that, when you say stuff like GMOs, for instance, which I've heard before that, and I'm not a scientist by any means, but things like gluten, for instance, the reason people have started to develop these allergies to gluten is because of genetically modified wheat, and that may not even necessarily be gluten itself, but people who have been allergic to wheat or whatever. They attribute that to the GMO movement. Well, whatever.
Is that true, though?
Well, exactly. That's my point. Is when you hear that kind of shit, you're like, oh, well, that's just conspiracy
right,
theory
so now
bullshit.
Chemtrails.
Exactly. So
now I'm lumped into this group.
And I wonder if that's kind of where like the whole douchey vibe
That eye
comes
roll.
from.
It is, yeah.
You get
it
the
is.
eye roll from people. Oh, great, here we go, another gluten-free. Oh, no, really? Like, if I don't do this, I'm eventually going to die a horrid death. Like, fuck you.
Well,
I don't want to do this by choice. In fact, I love the fuck out of some wheat. Like,
right?
So here's a couple of things, I guess, and that's a perfect segue. You love you some wheat. What would you say, and I think I know the answer, but what would you say is probably the biggest food, the thing that you've had to give up that's the hardest for you, that you don't want to have to give up?
Bread, and like homemade bread. Like,
okay.
I miss making it and like the smell of it and just like enjoying it. But also there's so many things though, because I've said donuts before.
I was gonna say
for
that was
so
gonna be my
long.
guess.
Yeah, I've said donuts.
And I think I know
because it's a hard one to replicate, and nobody cares enough in the gluten-free industry to make good food, and it's so sad.
Well, except for shameless plug, the guy from Salem.
Yes.
What's the name of that donut guy?
Oh my goodness.
Okay, you think about it because I want to ask you the same question.
Benjamin something, I feel like, is in the name. I can't remember.
Do you have
now.
your phone on you?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
no. But Kira makes some bomb gluten-free donuts, too. Kira's Donuts in Lake Oswego.
All right. Well, I think I know the answer for you, too. What's the food that you've had to give up since you found out about your allergy that you think is the hardest one to give up?
Big Wig Donuts is the name of that.
There you go.
They just do pop-ups in Salem. Just Google it. You'll find them. They're amazing.
They are pretty delicious. I have to agree. So, Ruby, jumping back to you, what's the food that you think you've had the hardest time with?
Motherfucking cheese.
Cheese. All right. That's what I thought your answer was going to be.
Oh, my God.
So...
Like, for real, if you had asked me, and I think I used to actually make this joke, like, if you told me I could only eat one kind of food for the rest of my life, like, you were like, now, fuck you, bitch, you can have yogurt, or you can have bread, or you can have one motherfucking thing for the rest of your life. Like, guaranteed I would have said cheese. Guaranteed.
Well, that's kind of what I thought. And up to this point in this conversation, we've talked about, unfortunately, being victims of the food allergy, right? But both of you, especially being here in Portland and just in Oregon in general, have found certain things where you can fight back against what you've missed out on and things like that. And like,
It's true.
things like for you, Ruby, where it's like cheese and eggs, even, that's one of my favorite things to eat, period.
Yeah.
And with you, Alicia, donuts and like something that I never would have thought about had gluten in it, beer. You can't even have a
Yeah.
beer.
I can't have a beer.
On this American holiday, Independence Day, you can't even have a beer unless you get like a PBR or like a Corona or
boo.
something that's supposed to be
Sorry,
gluten-free.
Portland, but boo on your PBR.
So
I love you, but boo.
what are some things with the gluten-free that you've been able to either substitute or find that might help out? I know cider, for instance, is an alcohol you can drink.
So in the alcohol department, we've got wine, we've got our hard liquor, which has rum and tequila, but also cider. Yeah, and I've grown to kind of love some cider. I'm a little bit of a snob, I guess, so I'm kind of picky. Can't be too dry, can't be too tart. It's got to be just right.
Can't be too sweet. Yeah.
But there's some good ones out there for sure.
Well, especially here in the Portland market, you've definitely got a wide variety of like,
Including the Portland
ciders.
Cider Co. They make some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Well, so
Strongbow cider is delicious. Their golden apple is amazing.
right on. And then, so outside of the alcohol, like, you've been able to replace like wheat flour with rice flour, for instance.
Yes.
Even though you got to read labels, make sure you know where that's sourced, because apparently there's some studies coming out about rice flour not being that great for you. Just if you are going to replace it, maybe look it up.
Typically, I think it's bleached or refined or something, and that cuts out that issue.
Okay, so
As long as you're getting like the right kind and a good brand and something from a trusted source, you do want to make sure that you have a good combination of other things though, like xanthan gum and potato starch.
Well, yeah, you need some kind of
other
binding agent, right?
there you go.
Really depending on what you're going to make. And if you're going to try to make a lot of homemade stuff, you want to do a combo flour, and there's tons of recipes online and books available that really show you how to substitute that and what makes the best combination for like a pizza dough versus making some bread versus making pancakes or brownies. And
well, and I kind of
going all
feel
out.
so being someone who cooks with you a lot and cooks for you, I guess I should say, or like has the same meals or shares the same meals that you have. I found that after it took a couple of years of actually like testing some things out, finding brands we like.
Yeah.
We were able to substitute basically everything that we would have had before for a gluten-free alternative, which, and I feel like in our world with being gluten-free, trying not to cross-contaminate, we've done really well. We've found some things. It does take a little bit of time to actually like refine it and find the things that you really want that, or that taste the best, I should say, or taste equal to the gluten.
Taste how you remember it.
Exactly, yeah.
That really good, like reminiscent thing. I'm eating a brownie. I'm not just eating this fudgy mistake that is covering for a brownie. It's, yeah.
Okay, so, and that's the thing I would probably say with it, is that especially with the gluten allergy, finding your alternatives or finding, actually, I would say even more so, spending the time with your allergy to find those replacements. It's possible, but it's not. It's going to take a little bit of time, so stick with it. We've even known someone
enjoy eating.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And we've known someone who tried doing gluten-free and couldn't handle it, even though they should have, and they just didn't give the time. Like, I really feel that's where it's at. So, using that as a segue over to the cheese, Ruby, I know that you, for instance, initially when you found out these kind of things, you immediately jumped into, I want to find alternatives. And this blows my mind, but just finding an alternative for cheese, period, or like the non-dairy versions. Those types of things were real tough. But you started looking into something. Well, you got real scientific about it. You started getting into like the molecules of food and stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm still kind of in wonder of what actually that is. So can you explain a little bit like what you mean by food being on the same molecular table as something else, or I'm probably mispronouncing that, but
yeah, absolutely. Well, and so you mentioned earlier the GMO thing, and I think that that's really cool too, and I will answer your question. I'm going to touch on that again, because I think that's what started it, was realizing you know, we were talking about cross-contamination, and that's really a thing. Realizing that every fucking thing on the shelf has basically the same 15 ingredients in it. It's going to be whatever it's supposed to be. Like, if it's barbecue sauce, yeah, it's still going to have tomatoes and vinegar and seasoning and fucking sweetener in it. But it's also going to have these other 15 things that all the foods just have in them now. And I'm not sure. I'm with Alicia. I'm not sure if it's because it's a cost-cutting measure, or if it's just because it's an additive, or if it's just because it makes it taste better, or if at this point it's just the way we do things. Like, that's just how it is, and fuck it. It's just one of those things that organically came to be the way that it's done. But I actually am a huge believer that that's what is causing a lot of this insensitivity to occur. I think if we didn't eat the same fucking 15 goddamn things in every meal that we consumed in such copious amounts, maybe our little happy little feelers in our tummies and our little bumps and ridges that are supposed to be there would still fucking be there. And I think that that's where I really got started on the whole idea of ingredients as a thing. And specifically when it came to cheese, because you're right, when I found out that cheese was no longer on the menu, I laughed. And for actually about the first year, I still ate cheese. And to be quite honest, I still kind of felt like shit.
I couldn't do it. I would have had to.
Well, yeah, but celiac is different. Celiac is a very different animal. And I feel like with you, like, you have to not consume wheat. You have to not. And because mine isn't that severe, I had that luxury where I could. Oh, you just died.
Been 2 weeks for the cheese. It would have been.
You know what? It actually happened on accident. It actually happened on accident because I spent a month not eating cheese. I had no intention of not eating cheese. I was just like, well, it's still going to be less pain and less weird bullshit that my body's going to do if all I cheat on is cheese. Like, as long as I don't eat eggs and I don't eat peanuts and mushrooms and any other dairy thing, if all I eat is cheese, then it'll probably be good enough that I can get away. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And that was just my life plan. And then on accident, I spent a month not eating cheese because, well, basically my husband made me promise to, because that's what the doctor said I needed to do. And so I did it. But I had no intention of continuing it after that month, except for the fact that I felt so goddamn good at the end of the month that I was like, oh. And I think that at that moment, my heart and soul really died a little bit inside, because I really realized, no, cheese isn't on the menu for you, sweetheart. Like, it doesn't matter that it's the most wonderful thing on the planet. Like, you can't have it, darling. And that's where the substitution came in. You're right. It took a tremendous amount of time. But reading ingredients and realizing, fuck, dude, if we can make barbecue sauce out of all the things that don't make barbecue sauce, I bet I can make fucking cheese
and it
out of
tastes
shit.
So good.
Right, and it is so good.
It.
And nobody even knows the fucking difference. Of course it tastes like barbecue sauce. So if that can happen, I can take everything that isn't fucking cheese and make it fucking cheese, because at the end of the day, it's all chemistry, right? Yeah. And that's where it started, is that I think one of the reasons our culture has such an obsession with food is that we've kind of started to go towards science, and it is about chemistry. Food is all about chemistry. There's a chemical reaction that takes place in almost all cooking, and that chemical reaction is based on specific compounds. And that's where, this is a shameless plug for me, by the way, but I am in the process of starting a company. This is where the vegan thing comes in. A vegan line of cheeses called Nomo. And the reason I'm starting my own, and this is not to bag on all of the people that have come before me, because it's truly incredible what science has accomplished.
Thanks for your valiant efforts.
Yeah, amen, guys. Like, you got me to where I can make cheese. But I think that, being perfectly brutally honest, most of the stuff that's on the market when it comes to vegan cheese is god fucking awful.
It's horrid.
And really, it's nobody's fault. It's that universally we have this one flavor of cheese, and it's called nutritional yeast. That's what everybody substitutes as cheese flavoring, nutritional yeast. And in my personal opinion, it's called nooch by those that are, that love it. The vegans call it nooch, I guess, because they kind of love it. I can't fucking stand it, which is really the problem. If I liked the flavor of nutritional yeast, I'd be all about the vegan cheeses. But all of them taste like shit because they taste like nutritional yeast, and I happen to think that nutritional yeast tastes like shit. So for me personally, it's awful. It's awful, and I can't even eat it. In fact, I don't eat cheeseburgers anymore because gross. I'd rather not have it. It's distracting. And so I set out on this mission. All right, if all the cheese that's out there is shit because we're just trying to emulate the flavor of cheese, maybe we can recreate it on a molecular level. Maybe we can create this biochemically identical substance that is cheese. And so it gets really cold in Corbett, which is where I live. And so in the wintertime, when you couldn't go outside because it was too fucking cold, I read a lot of books on traditional cheese making and chemistry and started experimenting and experimented, and the vast majority of them were really, truly god-awful. But I think now we have some pretty goddamn passable cheeses. In fact, I was handing them out yesterday at a party, and a gal came up and was nibbling on one before she realized it was vegan cheese. And to me, like, that's it. That's what I'm out for.
Yeah, as soon as you get to that point where it's not noticeable, or where you can substitute it without noticing at all, like, that's really where it hits its nexus. And I've tasted, for instance, like the Monterey Jack and the Pepper Jack.
Yeah.
The Pepper Jack
Solid.
is just as good, if not better
solid.
than... Yeah, well, and I don't know that I've ever had, like, fresh off the line cheese, so it might be some of the best cheese I've ever had.
Yeah, just because it's fresh.
Yeah, right? So that's awesome. Like, and what'd you say you're trying to jump off with Nomo? Is that N-O-M-O?
No mo bullshit.
It's actually Nohmoh, which is unfortunate, but that was the spelling that was available in the domain. So,
hey, whatever.
you know, I'm all about the domain names. That's where it's at for me.
Well,
yeah.
I like that.
Coming soon, Nomo.
Yeah, keep an eye out for it. Maybe by the time we have you guys on again, it'll be up and running. But I can vouch that at least the cheese that I've tried, and actually no, the whipped cream that I've tried that you made too, is amazing. It is definitely better than most whipped creams I've ever tried, period, because it doesn't leave that weird filmy taste.
Yeah, milk has such a weird film, and I didn't notice it until I stopped consuming it. But everything dairy has that weird film afterward.
Well, look out for Nomo. I know you don't have your own line of things going on, but are there any places? I know Kira's you mentioned earlier, which is in Lake Oswego here in Oregon.
That's what I said.
I know. I was pronouncing it correctly as an Oregonian or an oregano, as Marco would have put it.
What's
the other place? Liberated?
Thing. Liberated Baking is the other one. There's a lot out there that think they're good and they're not. I don't know what they're doing. They need to stop it though. They're making weird, like,
more
raw,
sugar is not a
stuff.
substitute.
And yeah, don't overdo it. You go overboard just because you think we miss sugar. We miss sugar. We miss all the things. We miss all the good things, but not like that. Liberated and Kira's though.
Liberated and Kira's.
And the donut guy in Salem.
Yeah, what was the donut guy's name again?
Big Wig Donuts.
Big Wig Donuts. And I've tried those donuts. Those donuts are delicious.
There's a few other, but we'll get to them another time.
All right, right on. Well, I thought this was an excellent talk. I'm sure people are going to find some value in it, and I feel like, especially once people listen a little bit, they might want to hear some like recipes, or how like you have substituted some of the cheeses, or like how you've substituted some of the wheat products. Would you guys be willing to come on, or you gals be willing to come on and talk about some recipes at some point or another?
Talk about food? Sure. What? I'm in.
We gonna eat some next time too?
Yes, we'll bring samples and we'll eat it on air.
Talk about
laugh at
that's
you
just
guys.
like smelling the weed on air.
Yeah, that's just as good.
This tastes so good. Can't you taste it through the airwaves? Or I guess these days through the data bytes.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you, Ruby Lexington. Thank you, Alicia Coleman, for being on the show, and PDX Podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime. We'll do this again.